This is a Kevlar piece of cloth that I'm going to resin to the front of the canoe to protect it from running up on rocks or sand. You can buy these kits for about, the cheapest I've seen them is like 86 bucks, but I've seen them for $110. But most people don't know that you can buy Kevlar cheaply by the yard, especially on eBay. This is just a leftover piece that I had when I was making some backpack bulletproof vests. I was experimenting with laminating Kevlar. Just kind of trace it out until I get the shape that I want, form it on there, and then we'll put it on with some resin. I start by wetting the surface down that I'm going to apply the stern protector on. A roller for this part really helps, even if it's a paint roller. Those work pretty good. Any extra resin can be used to fill in any rough spots at this point as well. Any little small dings that you might have missed if you're a horrible nitpicker like me. I'm going to mix the resin up to harden the Kevlar pad, and I'm kind of going with a Yankee Prepper theme on this canoe, so I'm going to do it in black and green. Any kind of oil-based paint will usually work to tint resin, but there's no instructions for this, okay? My advice to you would be just to test the paint out to make sure it hardens up with that resin. I always put a little more catalyst in as well. You don't need much. And again, no wiping, just blotting. Work it into the fibers. If you start wiping, you're going to have fibers everywhere. Now I'm going to let this cure completely, and then I'll come back and put one more thin coat of resin on top of it. Now if I was putting this on an already painted canoe, I would have taped this off so I'm not getting it all over the place, but it's definitely much easier if you're doing it this way where you don't have to worry about it. So I lightly sanded this down, and I'm going to put one final coat of resin over it to seal it up. When it's fully cured, it'll be glossy and rock solid. That's my homemade bow protector. Well, I'm ready to do my final sanding and then lay some paint on this, but I started looking at the aluminum rails on this, and I think I'm going to pay them a little attention and kind of brighten them up. The bow and stern points are pretty rough, and the rails are fairly dull and corroded. I'm going to shine them up a little bit. I don't want something that's going to be too bright when I'm on the water, but just to renew them a little, give it a new look. Nothing like a little elbow grease, right? Nice. Well, I'm down to the final sanding before paint, and how much sanding you want to put into a project like this is basically how well do you want it to look. A good word of advice is sand till you think you're done, and then sand one more time. Now I've sanded this down plenty, I think, for a $40 canoe. If this was my vehicle, I might sand it down some more. If it was a $2,000 Kevlar canoe, I might sand it down some more. But this is a $40 canoe, and it's going to be smoother probably than it came out in the factory when it was originally brand new. After I'm done sanding, I'll wash it off. Once it's dry, I'll wipe the whole canoe down with acetone. Then I tape everything off. My least favorite job, but has to be done. With the paint, I decided to go old school all around. I'm going to use an oil enamel. I'm going kind of a Yankee Prepper theme on this, so I'm going to use a green. And I'm going to cut it with about 10% mineral spirits. And then to apply it, I'm going to use a roll and tip method. I'm not going to lay a primer on beforehand. The oil enamel will stick plenty hard to that fiberglass, but I also don't want to put on any more weight to this canoe. I'm going to put this into a separate bucket to cut the paint, thin it out. Now, to be honest, rolling and tipping, there's an art form to it. I'm definitely not an artist in it. I've only done it once before. Even thinning the paint out for rolling and tipping, there's kind of a magic little secret spot for it to thin it out to get it to work right. And I'm just guessing here. I'm going 10% based on the humidity and temperature right now. Guys, here's why they call it rolling and tipping. Take your roller, work on a small section at a time, and work it in. And you tip. And you're hoping that you thin that paint enough for it to fill itself in. This is actually looking pretty good. Maybe not perfect, but pretty good. If I have to go back for a second coat, I will, but I'm pretty happy with how it's coming out. I think the key is to have a light touch. This is really filling in nicely, so I kind of just got lucky. I do see some streaks, but not from the brush strokes. It's you know, some of the back color, the original color leaking through, so I may have to go over some spots, but I'm pretty happy with this right now. See how that paint just fills itself in? Beautiful. Wow, does that look cool? Super happy right now. Halfway done. Wow, the second half even turned out better. I was laying the paint down heavier on this side, so there's not as many streaks. This side's got a few more streaks, but it still looks great. And I've only used half the quart. So I'm definitely going to be laying down another coat on this. I let that first coat dry completely for about 12 hours. And then I wet sand it with a little double-aught buck steel wool just to knock the shine off and knock any particles that dried off in the paint. Getting it ready now for the second coat. For the second coat, I'm going to add just a splash more of mineral spirits into this, just to thin it out a little more. I didn't have any runs yesterday, but I want this to go on a little lighter. That's what I'm talking about. This really turned out nice. The old school roll and tip application. It's a great way to lay paint. You know, it's not as easy as just spraying it on with a spray gun, but it's a lot better than spraying it on with a spray can. And there seems to be a lot more satisfaction in applying the paint that way. But this, again, turned out better than any of my expectations. But if I was even slightly worried about when I get scratches that it's going to show white underneath, I would have repainted the canoe white. But I take scratches as badges of honor in canoeing. Besides, I always wanted a green and black canoe. It needs one more thing here to really finish out this whole Yankee Prepper theme. Not bad for 40 bucks. What do you think, buddy? Not bad? That's awesome. Put your back into it. Put your back into it. Paddle, girls. Freedom. How do you guys like your new canoe? Awesome. It's all yours.